My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes, or when she called me in the middle of day. He yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry, and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now. I dated my ex-boyfriend for a few years and we broke it off a few months before COVID. We were both madly in love and I'm still not over him. My best friend knows this. A few months ago, she started getting distant from me and it's super unusual for me because she needs me for everything. Like just a few things that I helped her do: find colleges, apply to colleges, help donate money for her college fund, help her build her resume, find her therapy, find her a job, and countless other things. I even paid for a lot of stuff for her, like going on trips and such. She didn't really do much for me and was somewhat of an emotional support because we'd always talk about her. But then I really didn't mind and didn't care what I did for her. She was my BFF and you are best friends. They're sisters. Last month, she broke and told me that the reason that she's so distant is because she's quarantining with my ex and they're a thing. Whatever hopes I had of getting back to my ex are squashed because I don't think I can get over him hooking up with my best friend. I'm super heartbroken and I know that you don't own people, but that doesn't mean that you can't be upset about their betrayal. Yes, dating your best friend's ex that she still loves is a betrayal. She asked me if I was happy for her, because she finally got a good job and a nice boyfriend. That job she has is solely because of me because I asked an old acquaintance to return a favor by hiring my best friend. He wanted to hire someone else, but I begged him to hire her. I know how people are sometimes hurt but then they say, "But I'm truly happy for you." I honest to God don't think they mean it, and when I say I'm happy for someone, I want to mean it. I'm not happy for my friend. I just am not. I can't make myself be. I told her as such and told her to stop contacting me. She's now blowing up my emails and DMs because she's so hurt by what I said to her. My dad said that I should have just kept this to myself since I know my best friend is a sensitive person and is hurt. But what about me? Am I given a sensitivity pass because I've looked after my friend for so long? Do my feelings just stop matching at some point? She called me with the news and said that she didn't know how to tell me, didn't apologize. And then she followed it up with how she's finally doing well and doesn't have to rely on me for money since she has a nice job and also a nice boyfriend. I told her I was not happy for her. I reminded her that I got her the job, she knew and was fine with it. And that I've done so much for her over the years and she thanks me by backstabbing me and getting with my ex. She knew that it would hurt me and if she'd done it when I was well over him or with my permission, I'd feel differently. Then, I told her to not contact me again because clearly I'm her friend, but she was never my friend and I want to stick with people who are supportive toward me and reciprocate my friendship. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action. Seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. I am a 35 years old female, been with my fiancé for 3 years. We both work and we both share rent and other expenses. But my fiancé is currently looking for a new job. He lost his old job 3 months ago. My family lives 30 minutes away, and although it's been difficult this year, I decided to get my brother, who has a chronic condition and struggled a lot lately and was in the hospital for a few days for anemia. The one thing he's been wanting for some time. I got him an Xbox that cost me $300. He was so happy, and I'm glad I was able to cheer him up during those times. My fiancé received a few gifts from his family, but he wasn't happy with any of them. I got him a perfume and he liked it. We were visiting my family and we had dinner with them. My fiancé looked at the Xbox I got for my brother and didn't stop talking about it. My parents noticed. I told him to stop complaining about what he got / didn't get this year. That made them uncomfortable, especially since they've been dealing with my brother's health issues and needed to relax. We got home and my fiancé took something from the closet and left for about an hour. I was asleep when he came back. In the morning I was surprised to find my brother's Xbox in the closet. I woke him and asked him about it. Turned out he dropped me off, drove back to my family's house and exchanged the gift his aunt gave him, a $14 fancy pen, with my brother's Xbox. He said that my brother was happy to exchange gifts. I was so mad. I told him this wasn't for him and he basically took something that is not his. Not to mention a pen for an Xbox, that's ridiculous. He told me that maybe I shouldn't have spent $300 while trying to pay for rent. I told him as long as I can pay rent that's not a problem. And that he needs to find a job if he thinks my money isn't enough. I called my mom and I found out that they didn't actually exchange gifts. My fiancé pressured my brother into giving him his Xbox. I was livid and so mad I told him to take the Xbox back to my brother, but he said it was between him and my brother, but I insisted. He refused, so I ended up taking it myself. My fiancé argued when I took it and said that I was pressuring him and treating him poorly and have no respect for his feelings. I told him he was wrong to make my brother give him his gift and causing him stress and ruining his joy. I apologized to my brother and my parents and I felt awful because of how my fiancé behaved. My fiancé isn't talking to me, saying that I have no consideration for his feelings and not understanding how he feels, not having money to buy himself the things he likes. I'm surprised because he has never done anything like this before. I get that he's struggling with finding a job, but this is not an excuse.